Welcome to Your Legislative Link, a program designed to connect you with your leaders at the state capitol. I'm your host, Brent Stoddard, the Public Affairs Director with the City of Glendale, and I'm happy to have with me today Representative Ben Toma. Thanks for coming today, Representative.
Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience over this period of time. First of all, you're the newest member of the Arizona State Legislature, and we'll talk about that path and how you got there. But you're not new to the district that you represent. Legislative District 22 is from my perspective, one of the most unique legislative districts in that you've got a mix of, northern Glendale, you've got at least four city jurisdictions, you've got the county, one of the largest lakes in the state of Arizona, you've got wilderness, rural, urban. From your perspective, tell us your thoughts on Legislative District 22.
Well, you're first of all very correct. I'm very familiar with it. I happen to really like my district. We moved up into northern Peoria in 2007, and love the mountains and even the development is nice, especially some of the new businesses coming into the district.
Sure.
I also have northern Glendale, as you know, and there is a pretty big difference in demographics, right? Since especially the Sun Cities, Sun City West in particular, Portobello and some of the retirement communities are also included, and then it goes all the way out to Surprise. So we have quite a bit of Surprise as well. So you're absolutely right. We have actually one of the neatest events that I got to attend was to go and take a tour of the Ford Proving Grounds,
Wow.
which is also in my district. Very interesting, by the way. I recommend if anyone gets a chance to do that. I believe they have an open house from time to time. It's a really cool opportunity to go out there and check it out. All the neat things that they do and all the testing that happens in our unique environment.
Great. So you're new to the legislature, but you are not new to holding public office. You are a Peoria City Council member with the City of Peoria. Tell us about, is there anything that relates from your time as an elected official on the local level to your experience as a state legislator now?
Sure, yeah. So I did spend some time on the Peoria City Council, as you mentioned. And there are definitely similarities in holding the office. However, state level is a little bit different in the sense that on the city council, you're one of 7 that makes decisions, and also there are limited things you can make decisions about, right? Mostly municipal issues, zoning, things of that nature.
Sure.
While at the state level, you do represent a district, which is very important. But in addition to that, you represent really the whole state. So you're one of 90, really, amongst the House and the Senate. And the magic number is 48. And if I may explain that, the reason it's 48, and it's a very specific way you break it down. You need 31 votes in the House, you need 16 votes in the Senate, and you need the governor. So if you add those up, I believe it's 48. And you can't really get much of anything done unless you have achieved that magic number. So getting buy-in from your peers is incredibly important.
So a lot of cooperation, building coalitions,
Absolutely.
Working it through the process.
Absolutely.
So we mentioned you're the newest member of the legislature, but your path to the legislature has been untraditional to most of your colleagues down there. Representative Phil Lovis, who was the elected representative of Legislative District 22, resigned in the closing days or weeks of the session.
Yes.
To take a position in the administration for I think it was Small Business Administration.
Business, yes.
And so, of course, that vacancy then triggered a state statute and a process of how they find a replacement. Take us through from your experience, because it's so unique. What was that process like? Give us an inside look on how that all came to be.
Well, it was very quick, which is not normally common among politics in terms of processes. But essentially, while the legislature is in session, the statute states that the precinct committeemen of the particular district have 5 days to nominate 3 names to submit to the County Board of Supervisors, who will then choose one of those 3. So that's the official process. So from Representative Lovis's resignation, the official day of his resignation, there were really only 5 days to get the PCs together. There were about 147, I believe, PCs that you have to get together. You have to get, according to statute, the minority, a minimum, I apologize, of half of those PCs together in order to vote. We were able to do that. I was a PC also, and I've been a PC for a number of years now. And we're able to actually get 3 names nominated. I was humbled to have been chosen by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. And on a Wednesday morning, April the 26th, I believe it was. And the part of this that was probably unexpected is within 40 minutes, I want to say, of hearing my name called, and none of us had any idea, by the way, just as a side note, who was going to be chosen out of the 3. Both good gentlemen, by the way, that I happened to be friends with, that were the other options. And I was on the floor voting within 40 minutes of hearing my name that Wednesday morning.
That's amazing.
It was interesting.
So at the point the timeline was moving quickly.
Very.
At the point that you heard Phil Lovis was going to be resigning, at what point did you think this might be something that I'm interested in doing, is replacing him?
Sure. Well, it happened quickly, in short. It is something that I've been considering and I had been thinking about, but
running as a traditional candidate?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And it's something that I actually had discussed with Phil a year and a half or so before all of this happened. But it wasn't the right time, and I chose not to do it at that time. It was not on my radar, to be perfectly honest with you, when it happened now. But things happen, and you have to take advantage of the situation when it presents itself. And I put my hat in the ring, if you will, at the request of many of the other PCs. I was, again, humbled to have been chosen by the PCs,
right,
which is really the hardest part of all this in many ways. And I'm here today.
Yeah. So when you were one of the 3 that came forward out of that precinct committeeman process, and your names went to the County Board of Supervisors,
Yes.
what was that process like with the county? Was it a formal interview process? Was it a public thing, or was it behind closed doors? How did that process work?
Because of the timeline, the very condensed timeline, it ended up being a private process in a sense. But we were all interviewed and gone through, we had to go through background checks, and it was quite extensive, actually. At least in my case, I believe it was almost 3 hours of interview. And I was grilled thoroughly by the Board of Supervisors, and I think they did a good job of vetting each of us. And then they, as I mentioned earlier, they pretty much notified us that they will make a decision at their public meeting on Wednesday the 26th, which was about a week later.
Right, and of course you were the unanimous. It was a unanimous
yes,
vote to
yes.
To appoint
I was surprised by that, to be perfectly honest. It's hard to get everybody on the same page. I'm as you may know, I'm married and I have 5 daughters, and trying to get all 7 of us on the same page just never happens. So getting 5 people on the same page is virtually impossible,
yeah.
And I'm thrilled that and humbled, honestly, that they were able to make that decision.
Yeah. So the timing of that appointment, the legislature had been working not only on bills, they were well into they were into the final stages of
Yes.
the process, really just kind of working on the budget, putting. I remember you coming in. Speaker Mesnard, in fact, said to you, and I think it may have been in the newspaper and others, he's basically said, get ready to drink from the fire hose when it comes to budget stuff. Was that your experience, drinking from the fire hose in those final days of the legislature?
He wasn't joking, not in the least bit. You're absolutely right. As I mentioned earlier, from hearing my name to being sworn in to actually voting on our very first bills was a matter of less than an hour, 45 minutes, something to that effect. So, but I had good help. My seatmate, Representative David Livingston, was there with me answering all the questions. I bothered him quite a bit during those first couple of days. In addition to that, the House had some very good staff. That was actually the lead counsel for the House sat next to me during that first full day, so I was able to ask him questions. How does the system work? Who's voting on this? What are we voting on? What does this mean? It was overwhelming in many ways, but it was also very good because I had a lot of very good support.
And you were a student at ASU West. You probably felt like probably some late night studying documents, almost getting ready for it.
Exactly. Right before a real tough exam. That sort of feeling, absolutely, that first full day.
Yeah, excellent. So as a legislator, you're obviously going to not only represent the state, but you're representing the specific district that we talked about, Legislative District 22.
Mm-hmm.
your representation and how you advocate for the citizens. You take, everyone takes all the experience that they have in their life. You've obviously talked about some of your background in that district, but in the private sector, you were a real estate agent, a broker. You worked for several years with American Express in several different positions.
Correct.
Talk about how those experiences come together for Representative Toma to effectively represent the citizens of Legislative District 22.
Sure, it's a great question. You know, when I think about our district, District 22, the real estate is such a huge part of what's going on now in terms of growth, right?
Yeah.
The growth is everywhere. You know, and there's homes and new subdivisions being built virtually everywhere in my district. And so one of the concerns that I have is that we don't allow just homes to be built, but that we actually really work to attract businesses and employment to the district as well. So that, you know, if you live out in Surprise and you have to work in Tempe, you know, it's not a good day in terms of driving. So bringing more options to the West Valley, bringing more development to the West Valley, winning some big perhaps employers to the West Valley, much like the East Valley and perhaps you know, Northeast Valley has done. Would be huge for me in terms of priorities. But in terms of the background, you know, I believe that my experience in real estate is an asset really to the legislature as we think about the future, as we work on future economic development bills. And in terms of American Express, you know, probably the most significant part of that is I did quite a bit of data and analytics and also strategic planning at American Express, and so with very large numbers, which is very similar to what we're doing at the state. So in that sense, it sort of makes me comfortable, or a lot more comfortable, moving forward with some of the larger numbers and some of the larger strategic initiatives that we have going on.
Yeah. I've always thought it's a little bit of an advantage for real estate agents who then decide to get into elected office, because you're with people.
Sure.
And in a position where they're making big, major decisions, so you're having conversations about what's most important to them. The kind of conversations that politicians would a lot of times like to have with elected officials, with regular constituents on it, but you get to have those not as an elected official. So I've always thought that was a unique skill set, that particularly that real estate agents could bring, knowing the community, the layout, but then also being able to really hear from people what's most important in their lives as they're making big decisions.
Well, and that's actually absolutely correct. You know, when I think about representing clients, and I don't do much of that now, I'm the broker now, so I mostly oversee the agents, which is great. It's a different type of job a little bit. But you know, when thinking about the West Valley in particular, one of the things that really kind of irked me, to be perfectly honest with you, is why aren't clients with means coming out to the West Valley? You know, we have great restaurants, we have beautiful topography, we have the lake. Why aren't they out here? Why aren't they out here more and more? And why are they going to Scottsdale to buy half a house, if you will? Not trying to pick on Scottsdale, I'm just saying as an example. And you know what I found is that different things are important to different people, right? Proximity to jobs, for example, is hugely important to people. Proximity to places to go eat and you know, unique places to go eat especially seems to be a big deal. So as I think about those things that are important to people, I want to make sure that our district develops in that way. So that, and you guys have done a great job here in Glendale with the entertainment district, and I know it's grown, I know it's gone through some of its hard times, but I think it's rebounded nicely, and I'm really looking forward to what you're doing, and I think Peoria will do the same, Surprise, and obviously there will be continued growth north of the Sun Cities as well.
I agree. So you will start in the next session from the very beginning.
Yes.
You didn't have the opportunity to introduce your own legislation. All of those deadlines had already passed. You just focused, as you said, on studying and working and eventually helping to get that budget passed. As a new session coming up, what are the Representative Toma priorities that you will be working on as far as introducing legislation or partnering with others to advance legislation?
Again, great question. You know, since I ended up starting fairly late in the process, as you mentioned, by way of aside, this legislative session actually saw more freshmen than is usual for Arizona, and so in some ways, many were going through the end at least for the first time as well, right? Yeah. So I didn't feel totally alone on that part, but in looking through the next session, I've been studying quite a bit about the committee process, how that works, how to introduce a bill, how to amend a bill, how to get a bill passed through the entire process. And I'm doing that now because I want to make sure that when the session starts in January that I'm ready to hit the ground running. So in terms of specifically what I'm thinking about, there are sort of two levels here. One is that the governor's priorities and the legislator in general priority still seems to be education, and I think that's very important. This year, as you might know, we increased education spending by over $300 million directly. In addition to that, we insisted on a $1,000 per teacher raise for public school teachers this year, which was great, but we have to do more in that area. So that'll be a priority for all of us. In terms of for me personally, most of my priorities are going to be around economic development, especially given the needs and some of the things we talked about in my district. So development out north and out west is going to be what I'm really focused on, and specifically trying to get more and more businesses, both small businesses and large businesses, if we can get them into the district. Because again, having employment and sort of diversifying, strengthening our economy is going to be good for everybody long term.
Right, and I would agree, and particularly the partnership. If the cities and the state are working together, there is a lot of opportunities here in the West Valley for growth that don't exist anywhere else throughout the valley.
Looking forward to it,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And of course, you mentioned education, and
Yes.
Legislative District 22 is unique too because there are several school districts in that.
Yes.
I may have the numbers wrong, but just looking at a quick map, I thought I counted 7, 8, maybe even 9 school districts that crisscrossed and went through different parts of
Right.
the district.
Right.
And of course, with the growth and people coming in, not only through jobs and other things, that continues to be a priority, as you mentioned, from the state. What lessons do you feel like you learned in your first few weeks, but really the last few weeks of the session? What did you walk away from knowing that you can put to use as you now start a new session?
Well, I asked a lot of questions. For obvious reasons, that being the new guy and trying to get things done, that was necessary. But in terms of lessons, collaboration is so important,
Right.
And not just with my peers, which is sort of obvious, as I mentioned earlier, but also with other constituent groups, other representatives from the area, including city council members and you, for example, and people like you that work for the municipalities that are governed by or that are within the district, should I say. So that is very, very important. I think learning to listen to and communicate with constituents is probably the biggest, most important part of the job, in addition to knowing the process of the actual house and how things get done is also very important. So really my focus has been learning the process, communicating with people, and making sure that people communicate with me. And as I've stated numerous times to pretty much everybody I've talked to, I have my cell phone on my website. I have ways for you to email me, ways for you to text me. I think you can even Twitter me now, or whatever that's called when you contact me through Twitter. And I encourage people to use it. Contact me because in many cases I'm just human. I don't know everything that's going on, and it's important for me to hear from everybody whatever is most important to them. So at least I can do some research, and I've got good support, so I intend to do it.
How do citizens get involved in the legislative process, as you talk about, whether it's the budget or things? Can be really complex.
Yes.
If you don't understand what's going on, it can be intimidating just because you're dealing with statewide elected officials. A citizen sitting at home, they read or hear about something in the newspaper about a bill. They've got some interest in it. They may have some thoughts, some information, some facts. You talked about data. They may even have information from data that they collected. How does a citizen that hasn't been involved but cares, wants to have a voice, how do they approach getting involved with the legislature?
That's a great question. There are quite a few different ways to do that. But if I may give a bit of advice to constituents out
Absolutely.
there, what's going on at the state capitol can be very daunting. There are a lot of different types of things going on pretty much all at the same time. So my suggestion would be to find one or two issues that are very critical or that are very important to a constituent, kind of focus on that, start there, learn the process, and then if they want to, hit everything, by all means, get involved. But otherwise, what ends up happening is they sort of become overwhelmed, and then nothing happens, and that's a tragedy, in my opinion. So, in terms of how to actually get involved, obviously communicate with your representatives.
Right.
That's important. So, you can email, you can call. I'm more than happy to take either, and I know that Representative Livingston is as well, as is Senator Burgess, at least in my district. In addition to that, all of the proceedings are recorded, or you can watch them live, and you can watch them archived at azleg.gov.
Right.
So, and in addition to that, you can actually opt in the same system that we use to review bills. You can actually opt in as a constituent and say that you oppose something, or that you're for a particular bill, and may leave comments to that effect, which is hugely helpful to me as a constituent. That's one of the first, as a representative, that's one of the first things I did that first day is go to that system and look to see who's for a bill, who's against a bill, why, and try to understand, what exactly is going on. And I think many people don't know that you can actually do that, and we actually look at it as representatives. Some bills will have no one commenting on them. Some bills have hundreds of people commenting on them. But that's hugely helpful to us, and I believe it's going to be helpful to the constituents as well, so that they can see also who's for it and who's against it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the legislature has these resources, particularly the website. I think the section you're talking about is called the request to speak, and not only can you go in and put you don't have to speak, that's just what they call it,
right.
But you can go in and you can put your position on a bill. Are you in support?
Exactly.
Are you neutral? Do you oppose? And then you also can type some comments out, and the legislator can pull all of that information up at any point and see all of those. And as you mentioned, another thing that citizens can do in that website is they can log on and they can decide, I want to track a specific piece of legislation. So, while there may be 1,400 bills that are introduced through a whole legislative process, there may be only one or two that someone's interested in. You can go in and choose those bills, and then you can watch and see, is there a hearing coming up? Is it moving forward through the process?
Absolutely.
Is there a vote coming
Absolutely.
up? So there are a lot of those resources available on the legislature's website. That's a great point.
That's exactly why I mentioned that, because as you know, it can easily get lost. You don't know if the bill is in committee, or if it's gotten out of committee and now it's going to committee of the whole, or where it is. And it's important to be able to track it. That's why focusing on one or two bills, or at least subjects, is I think a good place to start.
Great. You'd mentioned some of the ways that citizens get in contact. If someone's watching this program, the legislative session starts. What's the best way to? Is it Twitter, email, calling your office? What's the best way for citizens to get a hold of you?
In some ways, I'm still pretty traditional. I email and calling the office is probably the most immediate way to get a hold of me. If I get a call from a constituent, I pretty much call them right back right away. So if it's something critical and time sensitive, I highly encourage a call to my office. And otherwise, email works great as well. Twitter, it's at Rep Ben Toma, so easy to remember.
Sure.
So you can also contact me through that. I do have Facebook and website and all that as well. So happy to give those out, and anyone that wants to get a hold of me. And I think I'm the only Ben Toma in the Valley, so it's pretty easy to find me if you just do a Google search.
Excellent. Well, Representative, thank you for joining us together. It was a pleasure. To get to know you a little better. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Legislative Link. Also visit our Glendale Intergovernmental Programs website, which also has a lot of information about the legislature, about members of Congress, how to get involved, contact information for all of the individuals, and a whole host of other resources to allow citizens to get engaged and active with the leaders that represent them. We'll see you next time.